All right, so picture this. A crew of, well, pensioners, basically, pulling off one of the biggest heists in history. I mean, come on. This is the stuff of movies, right? We're going deep on the Hatton Garden safe deposit burglary today. The story where it seems like, I don't know, a retirement home decided to take on the Diamond District.
Yeah, and they won.
They did.
Over Easter weekend 2015, this group hit the heart of London's jewelry trade, Hatton Garden.
Hatton Garden. It's like legendary.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just a street, it's steeped in history and wealth. Think of it like the Fort Knox of bling.
Yeah.
And these guys, they cracked it wide open.
No kidding. We're talking up to 14 million, that's over 17 million US dollars.
Yeah.
In jewels, cash, just gone, vanished. But here's the kicker, and I think this is where it gets really interesting. There was no smash and grab, no guns blazing.
Very meticulous, very planned.
Exactly. It was planned down to the Easter holiday. I mean, brilliant, right? When most businesses were closed.
They had the place to themselves.
Totally. They even had Londoners thinking a nearby fire was a diversion, though that turned out to be totally unrelated.
Right. Just bad luck for everyone, except for the thieves, of course.
Talk about a lucky break for them. So it makes you wonder, was it really just luck?
Well, that fire, it kind of highlights how this wasn't just some fluke. These guys knew what they were doing. They got into the building, get this, through the lift shaft.
No forced entry.
None whatsoever. And then they used a diamond-tipped drill to get through the vault walls.
Oh, come on. Those things are, what, like a foot?
50 centimeters thick, so yeah, about that. Imagine trying to drill through your refrigerator, but tougher. Much tougher.
Okay, I'm already picturing those, the old-timey striped burglar outfits lowering themselves on ropes. But I have a feeling these guys were a little more sophisticated.
Definitely not your stereotypical cat burglars. I mean, think about it. The ages of these guys range from mid-40s to their late 70s. The oldest was 76.
76, what was he doing?
Exactly. And get this, many had long criminal histories. I mean, one of them, Brian Reeder, he was actually involved in laundering the proceeds from the Brinks Mat robbery back in '83.
Oh, I remember that one.
One of the biggest gold bullion heists in history.
So we're talking about a guy who helped hide millions from another legendary heist, and then decades later decides, you know what? I'm going to pull off my own. This is crazy.
It's like Ocean's 11 meets the Golden Years. Right.
Exactly. And the media, they ate it up, didn't they?
Oh, absolutely. They gave them nicknames based on that grainy CCTV footage. Mr. Ginger, Mr. Strong, Mr. Montana. It added this whole layer of, I mean, it's almost comical, isn't it? This intrigue to the case.
Okay, but comical aside, they did get away with a ton of valuables. How did the police finally catch up to this geriatric gang? I mean, were they leaving their dentures at the crime scene?
Well, they almost got away with it. But like any good heist story, there's always a flaw. In this case, it was the CCTV footage. The police, specifically London's elite flying squad, they analyzed every frame.
They're good.
Oh, they are. They eventually identified these diamond geezers, as the press called them. They released the footage to the public, and boom, tip line blew up.
I love that the public helped crack the case. So what happened to our diamond geezers once they were caught? Did they at least get to enjoy a nice retirement cruise with all that loot?
Not quite. 3 of them, John Kenny Collins, Daniel Jones, and Terry Perkins, they pleaded guilty. They each got 7 years. 2 others, Carl Wood and William Lincoln, were found guilty. Got 7 and 6 years, respectively.
All right. So far, so good. I mean, that seems pretty fair for a heist of this magnitude. What about the ringleader, Brian Reeder, the guy with the Brinks Mat connection?
He actually got 6 years and 3 months.
Really? I would have thought he'd get harsher, given his past.
You'd think so, wouldn't you?
What about the rest of the crew?
Well, there's Hugh Doyle. He was found guilty. But he got a suspended sentence of 21 months and a relatively small fine.
Hold on, a suspended sentence. That seems incredibly lenient compared to the others. Was there something specific about his role in this, or was this just a case of the judge feeling generous that day?
It does raise questions, doesn't it, about fairness, especially considering how much they stole. And get this, the authorities were only able to recover around 4.3 million of the stolen goods. So millions are still missing.
Okay, that's just took this whole story to another level. We've got missing millions, potentially stashed somewhere, a sentencing discrepancy that has me scratching my head. This is like a true crime puzzle box. And of course, we can't forget about the victims. They lost more than just money, right?
Absolutely. We're talking family heirlooms, things that can't be replaced. That's a whole other layer to this heist.
Yeah, the human cost that often gets overshadowed by, The thrill of the crime.
Exactly.
You're so right. It's easy to get caught up in the how they do it aspect, but we can't forget about the people who were hurt. And I bet this whole thing turned Hatton Garden upside down, right? Talk about a PR nightmare for London's Diamond District.
Well, it's interesting because while the heist was a huge blow, it also put Hatton Garden on the map in a way it hadn't been before.
It's like that saying, any publicity is good publicity, right?
Right.
But seriously, this story is insane. Daring seniors, millions in missing jewels, questionable sentences, and enough twists and turns to make your head spin.
And we haven't even touched on the mastermind who got away.
Oh, there's more?
For a while, at least. He's a whole other chapter in this crazy story.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
You've officially hooked me. I need to know everything.
All right, so you ready for this? This next part is, well, it's pretty wild. Remember how I mentioned one of the masterminds went missing?
Yeah, Basil. Right.
That's the one. Michael Seed, but Basil to his associates. Basically, he vanished
Poof.
into thin air after the heist. While his buddies were getting arrested, sentenced, the whole 9 yards.
So while everyone else is getting caught, this guy's just out there living his best life. Did he have a secret underground lair or something?
Not quite a lair, but he was a ghost, that's for sure. Unlike the others, Basil kept a low profile, you know? Avoided attention.
Smart.
Oh, yeah. While the police were busy rounding up the, let's say, more visible members of the gang, Basil was probably sipping tea, reading the newspaper, completely under the radar.
That is incredible. It makes you wonder, was he the brains behind the whole operation? Maybe the others were just pawns in his elaborate game.
It's possible. Seed was known for meticulous planning. I mean, he wasn't just good at cracking safes, he was good at disappearing. And it took 4 years for the police to finally catch up to him.
4 years. That's longer than some of the actual sentences the others got. How'd they finally nab him? Did he get careless or was it just luck?
It was a bit of both, really. The police never gave up. They kept digging, analyzing every little bit of evidence, and eventually they got a break. They found his DNA, get this, on a discarded water bottle.
A water bottle. Seriously.
Near one of the stash houses used by the gang.
Talk about a tiny detail leading to a huge bust. It's kind of poetic, isn't it?
It goes to show you, you can be the most meticulous criminal, but you can't control everything. And once they had that DNA match, they tracked him down, finally arrested him in 2019.
Okay, so 4 years on the run, finally caught because of a water bottle. What happened next? Surely they threw the book at him, right?
They did. Seed was sentenced to 10 years.
10 years.
Longer than some of the other gang members. And, get this, he was ordered to pay back over £6 million.
6 million.
If he doesn't. Another 7 years.
That's a hefty price to pay for a few years of freedom. Sounds like justice was served, though, even if it was delayed.
It definitely sends a message. Even the most cunning criminals can't outrun the law forever.
Nope. They always get caught in the end.
Yeah.
But before we get too lost in all the twists and turns of this case, can we circle back to the victims for a minute? I mean, we know they lost a lot of valuable stuff, but what was actually in those safety deposit boxes?
It's a bit of a mystery, to be honest. We know it was a mix of diamonds, gold, jewelry, cash, of course, but also rare collectibles, antique watches, wartime medals. Some even had personal documents stored there. Things with sentimental value, stuff you just can't replace.
Man, that's heartbreaking to think about. And the fact that so much of the loot is still missing just adds insult to injury. Imagine knowing your family heirloom, something irreplaceable, is out there somewhere. Maybe being sold on the black market or tucked away in some hidden location.
It's like a real-life treasure hunt, but with a tragic backstory. There are probably people out there who lost things that meant the world to them, and they may never see them again.
Yeah, it really puts the whole heist into perspective, doesn't it? We can talk about the audacity of the crime, the colorful characters involved, but at the end of the day, this was a devastating event for a lot of people. It makes you wonder, did the thieves ever think about that? The human cost of their actions?
It's hard to say. Maybe they justified it in their minds, thinking it was just about the money, not realizing the emotional value attached to some of those items. Or maybe they just didn't care.
It's a sobering thought. But let's shift gears a bit here. This heist, it's become a pop culture phenomenon, hasn't it? Documentaries, TV shows, even a movie with Michael Caine. Why do you think this story continues to captivate people?
I think it's the classic underdog element. You've got a bunch of, senior citizens taking on the establishment, and for a while they actually win.
It's like David versus Goliath, but with dentures and diamond drills.
Exactly. And then there's the mystery of the missing loot, those colorful characters, the sheer audacity of the plan. It's a real-life heist movie, keeping you guessing until the very end.
And let's be honest, there's a part of us, maybe a small part, that kind of admires their ingenuity, even though we know what they did was wrong.
Oh, absolutely. We're drawn to stories about people who break the rules, especially when they do it with, I don't know, style and panache.
Yeah, they were good at what they did.
But ultimately, I think it's the human element that really resonates.
What do you mean?
Well, on one hand, you have the victims, right? They represent the vulnerability we all feel when it comes to our possessions or security. And then you have the perpetrators, these flawed, aging men who, despite their actions, remind us that we're all capable of making choices, good and bad.
It's a reminder that life is full of complexities, contradictions, and sometimes the line between right and wrong isn't always as clear as we'd like to think.
Exactly. The Hatton Garden Heist, it's a story that challenges our perceptions, forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world around us.
Well said. And on that note, I think we've covered a lot of ground here, but
Yeah.
there's still one burning question I have. Okay, so we've covered a lot: the heist itself, the investigation, the sentencing, the missing loot, even the whole pop culture fascination. But I don't know, there's this one thing I just keep coming back to. These guys were old. I mean, we've mentioned it, but it's just wild to me. They pulled this off in their 60s, 70s, even 80s.
Yeah, it's something, isn't it? You know, we tend to think of, well, aging as slowing down, taking it easy. But these guys, they were out there drilling through concrete walls, outsmarting the police. I mean, it really does make you think twice about what people are capable of, no matter their age.
Totally. I'm picturing, like, my grandpa trying to program a VCR. And these guys are pulling off the biggest heist in English history. It's like they had this, like, second wind of criminal energy.
It's what makes this whole story so fascinating, right? All these questions about aging, motivation, taking risks. Were they bored with retirement? Did they feel like they had nothing to lose? Or was it just the thrill of one last score?
Maybe they were proving something, to themselves or to the world. Like,
Oh.
hey, we might be old, but we can still pull off a job that'd make those young punks jealous.
A twisted bucket list. Instead of skydiving or traveling the world, they decided to rob a high-security vault.
And they were good at it. Experience, planning, understanding the risks. They weren't just some reckless kids. These were seasoned pros.
Absolutely, they brought a lifetime of knowledge and skills to this heist. It's partly why they got away with it for so long. They knew how to cover their tracks, how to blend in, how to avoid those crucial mistakes.
It's like they were playing chess while the police were still trying to figure out checkers.
And that's why it still grabs us, you know? It's a reminder that age is just a number. And that human potential, for good or bad, it can show up in the most unexpected ways.
No kidding. And the fact that they drilled through a 50-centimeter wall.
That image alone, it's iconic. The planning, the audacity, the sheer determination of this whole operation.
And let's be real, the fact that they got away with so much loot just adds to the legend. A real-life treasure hunt still going on. Somewhere out there, those missing millions are waiting.
It's a tempting thought, isn't it? Maybe one day someone stumbles across a hidden stash of diamonds and gold. The whole story comes full circle.
I wouldn't be surprised. This whole thing is full of surprises. But, beyond the thrill of the heist, the mystery of that missing loot, I think there's a bigger takeaway here.
What's that?
Perspective. It's easy to get caught up in the audacity, the cleverness of the perpetrators. But we can't forget the victims, right?
Right.
Those people lost more than just money. Irreplaceable items, memories, pieces of their lives.
Absolutely. It's easy to overlook that human cost when you're, caught up in the details of the crime itself, but they're crucial to the story.
They are. And their loss, financial, emotional, it's a reminder. Every action has consequences. And sometimes those consequences, they can be far-reaching, devastating even.
Well said. I think that's a good point to end on. The Hatton Garden Heist, it's a story that'll keep being told, analyzed for years to come. It challenges our perceptions, makes us question what we think we know, and in the end, it reminds us how complex human nature really is.
It's been a wild ride for sure, and I have a feeling we'll be talking about this one for a long time to come. So to everyone listening, keep exploring, keep questioning, keep diving deep into those stories that shape our world. Because sometimes the most fascinating stories, well, they're the true ones.